Welcome back to Comic Cappers. Today we will be capping the third issue of Absolute Martian Manhunter. With that said, grab a snack, sit back, relax, and enjoy the ride. We open on a quiet, brutal image of Big Al, a man who has known nothing but the harshness of the streets since he was a teenager, now huddled under a newspaper blanket. The pacing accelerates into a rhythmic, terrifying sequence of ignition. A match strikes, a cigarette catches, the flame dances, and then the eyes. The Martian entity isn't just watching, it is consuming the perspective of the victim, turning the very act of living into a fuse. The fire intensifies, bridging the gap between the internal spark and the external horror. The fire explodes, not just as a physical blaze, but as an overwhelming, searing scream. The atmosphere is thick with the smell of smoke and the sound of agony. In the aftermath, we see the cold reality of the scene. The fire has done its work, leaving behind nothing but the remnants of a life discarded in the dirt. As the life fades, the caption hits with a crushing irony. Even after 20 years of displacement, the human soul's final, desperate reach is for the one thing the Martian entity is hell-bent on destroying: home. The scene opens on the grim, charred outline of a life extinguished. The narrative caption underscores the tragedy. Even after 2 decades on the streets, that final, desperate human impulse was simply to return home. We cut to John Jones, his expression weary and detached. The internal monologue of the Martian entity continues, cold and clinical, already calculating the scope of the carnage. We pull back to the crime scene where colored ribbons of energy seem to hang in the air, marking a bizarre, coordinated strike. The numbers are chilling: 24 victims, 24 perpetrators, a perfect, impossible symmetry. Finally, we see the investigators on the ground. The reality of the situation is sinking in. But while they focus on the logistics and the overtime pay, the true horror of this synchronized, conceptual warfare is just beginning to take root. John Jones observes the gathering crowd behind the police tape. The Martian entity within him perceives these grieving neighbors as something far more ominous, radiant expressions of a life cycle that it intends to snuff out. We see the Martian entity looming over John as he lights a cigarette. It coldly dissects the arson event, noting the bizarre, synchronized nature of the 24 victims. The entity dismisses the human investigators' confusion, labeling their search for a motive the same wrong question. Detective Mayweather offers a cynical, weary take on human cruelty, but John, or rather the entity piloting him, counters with a chilling bit of professional advice that hints at his own detachment from humanity. The tension between the two men spikes instantly. John's internal monologue turns prophetic and dark, viewing the police work as a corrosive force that is inevitably turning Mayweather into a monster, illustrating just how far John has drifted from his own life as a man. John Jones kneels at the crime scene, his internal monologue revealing just how deep the Martian entity's influence has reached. He's not just hearing voices, he's rationalizing the arson instinct as a necessary, almost clinical, emancipation. John shifts his focus to the victims, specifically questioning why they didn't seek refuge at the Sunnyside hotel. It's a jarring moment of detachment. He's analyzing their choices like a cold observer rather than a grieving human. He recalls Big Al, the homeless man from the previous page, and the brutal reality of the shelter system. The Martian entity categorizes these human experiences as a concept constellation, reducing Big Al's entire life of suffering into a sterile data point. John continues his grim assessment, noting that Big Al preferred the dangers of the street over the indignities of a shelter. Suddenly, the reality of his own slip-up hits him. He's referring to the victim by name, despite not knowing him. Detective Mayweather catches the anomaly. He's looking at John with suspicion, forcing John to realize that his facade is cracking, and the alien presence is becoming impossible to hide. John is forced to maintain his cover as an FBI agent while the Martian entity looms behind him like a literal shadow. He's interrogating a suspect, trying to reconcile the cold, clinical reality of the Martian's influence with the horrific, human tragedy of a mass murder event. The interrogation shifts to the suspect's bizarre, shared compulsion. John's internal monologue is fraying as he finds himself obsessed with the idea of extinguishing the embers, a terrifying parallel to the arsonist's own destructive urges. We get a glimpse into the twisted psychology of the arsonists. One suspect justifies their violence through a traumatic flash of memory, while the Martian entity reduces these deeply personal, human horrors into a sterile list of pre-existing conditions and kindling. John observes the disparate reactions of the perpetrators. Some are shattered by genuine remorse, which the Martian entity dismisses with a cold, reductive label: victims. Others remain defiant or silent, protected by counsel. The Martian entity highlights the one thing linking every single one of these killers: that pervasive, alien thought smoke clouding their minds. John realizes he's becoming a master of deception, hiding the truth of his own complicity from his official reports. He's not just observing the destruction anymore, he's actively compartmentalizing it, just like the people he's supposed to be arresting. John is behind the wheel, his own eyes reflected in the rearview mirror, but the internal monologue is pure Martian nihilism. He's framing the end of the world as a grand, inevitable performance. The Martian entity is literally riding shotgun, a looming, green-skinned shadow manifesting in the passenger seat. It isn't just a voice anymore, it's a presence framing humanity's demise as a gaudy, gorgeous funeral march. As John drives through the city, the Martian describes its influence not as a command, but as a philosophy, a cosmic appreciation for the closing ceremonies of civilizations. John pulls up to his own driveway, the headlights cutting through the night. The entity is struggling with the limitations of human language, trying to bridge the gap between alien concepts and our reality, worried that its message of destruction isn't landing with enough impact. Stepping out of the car, John's perception shatters. The familiar suburban street erupts into a chaotic, psychedelic nightmare of color and motion, a visual manifestation of the thought smoke that makes the simple act of going home feel like an alien apocalypse. John is drowning in a literal storm of sensory overload, a neon-drenched, chaotic psychic landscape where he desperately tries to pin down the entity living inside his own mind. He pushes for answers, but the entity is fundamentally incapable of human empathy, dismissing his confusion with cold, cosmic indifference. Through the window, we see John looking like a man possessed, his body language erratic as he stands outside his own home, unaware that his wife, Bridget, is watching him from the shadows. The entity offers a condescending analogy, comparing the complexity of human law to the primitive awareness of a sunflower seed or a pebble, effectively silencing John's moral inquiry. John retreats into silence, realizing he cannot share this burden with his family. The entity reveals its true, terrifying nature as a cosmic predator that has already extinguished 100,000 worlds, claiming that destruction is its only true purpose. As the page closes, the entity gives John a chilling ultimatum: enjoy his domestic life while he still can, because the tragedy is already set in motion. John and Bridget sit in their living room, but they are miles apart. The air is thick with the unspoken, a swirling psychic miasma of Bridget's anxieties. The isolation of their move, the erosion of their social circle, and her terrifying, silent question, if she left with their son Tyler, would John even care? John tries to reach out, attempting to break the suffocating silence by opening a window. He starts to speak, but the connection between them is already frayed to the point of snapping. Suddenly, the domestic tension is interrupted by a jagged, intrusive memory of Special Agent Sutry. It's a harsh, confrontational flash, highlighting the professional bridge John burned to get here, and the disappointment of a man who saw the cracks in John's facade long ago. John pivots, completely unable to sustain the interaction with his wife. He retreats toward the stairs, using Tyler as a convenient excuse to escape, leaving Bridget alone with the weight of his detachment. John enters his son's room, trying to force a moment of domestic normalcy, only to find the space occupied by something far more alien. Tyler sits at his desk, playing with modeling clay, while a massive, hulking Martian presence looms directly behind him. The tension is shattered by the shrill vibration of John's phone. The sound is an intrusion, a harsh reminder of the life he's trying to keep separate from this nightmare. The Martian entity, cold and clinical, commands John to answer the call. It has no interest in maintaining the ruse of a father-son moment when duty calls. John answers, his voice tight with alarm as he recognizes the urgency on the other end. The detachment he felt earlier is gone, replaced by the immediate panic of a crisis unfolding. He rushes out, his composure completely disintegrating as the gravity of the situation hits him. The urgency in his voice suggests the arson investigation has hit a breaking point. Stepping outside into the cool night air, John tries to maintain his cover while on the phone, but his body language and tone betray that he is losing control of his dual existence. John stands on the precipice of a nightmare, watching as the city below is consumed by an unnatural, sprawling inferno. The Martian entity within him, cold and detached, frames this catastrophe not as a tragedy, but as a calculated experiment in destruction, a grim label for the chaos unfolding before them. Middleton is supposed to be the city of second chances, but as John Jones surveys the wreckage, the scene is a sensory nightmare of survival. Amidst the ruins of the Baptiste Bakery, the air is thick with the clashing scents of ginger buns, sweat, and the absolute crushing weight of human sorrow. John, ever the detached observer, watches a woman in a stained nightgown, a victim of this senseless arson, staring blankly as she asks for a handout. She's completely hollowed out by shock. It is a grim, quiet moment of empathy that feels entirely foreign to the entity currently riding John's nervous system, as he observes the sheer scale of what this woman has lost. The Martian entity, however, sees something else entirely. It doesn't see a grieving mother. It sees the raw, combustible energy of human attachment as a weapon, describing her love for her children as a blast furnace capable of incinerating diamonds. John stands amidst the wreckage, his mind and the Martian entity within cataloging the absolute chaos. The entity coldly observes how the arson is spreading beyond simple proximity. It's not just random acts, it's a systematic dismantling of safety. The entity highlights the domestic horror of people turning their own sanctuaries into funeral pyres, a direct assault on the very concept of home. The destruction reaches a sickening new low as children participate in the annihilation of their own playground. The entity doesn't see tragedy, it sees the complete eradication of the innocence that home represents. John is pushed to his absolute breaking point, the Martian entity's voice bleeding into his own as it mocks the chaos. It dismisses the randomness of the arson attacks, insisting there is a cold, calculated order behind the flames. The entity forces John to expand his perception, stripping away his human filters to reveal the implicate order of the universe. It demands he use Martian vision to see the true target, and for the first time, John stops looking at the fires and starts seeing the target itself. The realization is chilling. The entity isn't just burning buildings, it's waging a war against the human concept of home itself. It's an attack on the foundational idea of safety, spanning every structure, past and future, across the entire planet. It concludes with a terrifying, abstract definition of the entity's true enemy. By targeting the conceptualization of home, it is trying to incinerate the very sanctuary of the human soul. John's Martian perspective has finally crystallized. He identifies the next target, and the entity's cold, clinical focus narrows down to a single, devastating concept: shelter. The Sunnyside Hotel isn't just a building, it's the city's largest homeless shelter, a place of last resort. As the fire erupts, we see the immediate, violent displacement of the city's most vulnerable. John snaps into action, his voice urgent as he alerts the authorities. He's no longer just watching, he's actively trying to mitigate the damage caused by the entity's war on the idea of home. The narration highlights the cruel irony behind the name. It's a place families are told they're going to, a desperate attempt to maintain a facade of normalcy for their children. It's a heartbreaking reality check. While parents try to sell it as a vacation resort to keep their kids calm, it is in truth the final stop before everything falls apart. John's Martian consciousness begins to bleed into the scene, projecting a terrifying, hallucinogenic manifestation of trauma onto the victims at the Sunnyside Hotel. The entity frames their flight not as survival, but as a pathetic attempt to escape a predatory past. The Martian entity coldly catalogs the wreckage of human lives, stripping away any dignity from their struggles with addiction and abuse, reducing their existence to mere variables in its nihilistic equation. As John navigates the smoke and chaos, the entity's voice mocks the human desire for connection and stability, framing every personal choice as a failure of responsibility. Finally, the entity cuts to the core of its twisted philosophy. It rejects the human need for normalcy, viewing the collective desperation for home as a weakness to be exploited and ultimately eradicated. John Jones crashes through the wreckage of the Sunnyside Hotel, guided by the Martian entity's alien perception. The very air seems to warp around him, offering a desperate, violent chance to intervene before the building is lost. We see John's silhouette, literally tethered to these chaotic, swirling colors, a visual metaphor for how the entity manipulates his physical presence. The narration notes that while they were only a short distance away, the Martian doesn't move through the world like a human. John arrives at the fire, his movements guided by the entity's cold, calculating intellect. It's a jarring shift. He's not just running, he's bypassing the constraints of geometry itself. By exploiting non-Euclidean shortcuts, John is instantly amidst the panic. He's physically present at the scene, yet entirely detached from the human terror unfolding around him, perfectly positioned to witness the destruction he's supposedly here to prevent. John Jones navigates the Sunnyside Hotel, shielded by the entity's manipulation of oxygen atoms. It's a chilling reminder that he is being protected not for his own sake, but as a vessel. Nearby, survivors look on in total confusion. Their expressions capture the sheer impossibility of what they are witnessing, a man walking through an inferno unscathed. The question mark hanging over them says it all. They are looking at a miracle, but they have no idea what kind of monster is fueling it. John's perspective shifts as he observes the blaze from outside. He realizes these aren't just flames, they are manifestations of the entity's nihilistic intent. In a final, visually chaotic panel, the entity's influence bleeds into the physical world, warping the environment into a psychedelic nightmare. Witnesses stand frozen, baffled by the strange, glowing emanations surrounding the scene, completely unaware that the hero in their midst is a host for an alien parasite. John is deep in the heart of the Inferno, and the Martian entity is struggling for dominance. The internal conflict is visceral, manifesting as a psychic clash of toxic emotions. Standing amidst the flames, a figure emerges, wreathed in fire but seemingly untouched by it. This isn't just a victim, it's a conduit for something else. A haunting, small inset panel focuses on the fiery silhouette, a burning effigy of human form that highlights the alien nature of the threat. Outside the immediate danger zone, the reality of the situation crashes back in. Detective Mayweather calls out into the chaos, looking for his partner. The possessed victim stares into John's soul, the Martian entity's influence turning the human form into a grotesque mouthpiece. It knows exactly what John is, a parasite hiding in a human host, and it's mocking him for his pathetic attempt to blend in. John's face is a mask of pure, unadulterated shock. The realization that he's been exposed in such a public, horrifying way hits him harder than the Inferno itself. A small inset shows the burning silhouette, a reminder of the inhuman energy fueling this nightmare. Outside the immediate psychic pressure, Detective Mayweather is still searching, completely oblivious to the cosmic horror unfolding inches away from him. He's just a man looking for his partner in a burning building. The entity continues its psychological warfare, taunting John with his own helplessness. It's not just burning the hotel, it's putting on a show for its host. A massive, fiery crash tears through the structure, the debris raining down as the building finally begins to succumb to the Inferno. Mayweather finally catches a glimpse of the carnage, his reaction one of raw, human horror as he realizes the scale of the tragedy he's walked into. John Jones stands amidst the Inferno, but he isn't looking at the flames. The Martian entity within him takes center stage, manifesting as a towering, skull-like visage formed from the very smoke of the destruction. It's a chilling reminder that for this entity, the fire is just a distraction, a secondary effect. The true weapon is the thought smoke, the psychological residue that erodes human perception and reality itself. Returning to the immediate horror, John stares down at the burning victim. The poor soul is still babbling, clearly broken by the entity's influence, taunting John about his changing professions and insisting that John understands exactly what's happening here. The smoke curls around them like a suffocating tether, spelling out the entity's name as the scene cuts to black, leaving us with a haunting cliffhanger. And that unfortunately concludes our comic cap for today. With Detective Mayweather finally witnessing the carnage and the entity exposing John's true nature, do you think John can still maintain his cover as a detective, or is his secret life as a Martian officially over? Let me know your answer in the comments section down below. Be sure to subscribe and press that notification bell for daily comic caps. Until next time, take care, brush your hair, I'll see you when I see you, peace.